It is a good day, and we are live. Welcome, everyone, to our mastermind group. Monday, the 8th of November. Good times, good times. It is the first day of standard time for most of the continent. That's right. Of course, here we never change clocks. So my entire calendar gets wacky twice a year because Arizona, everybody else moves, we don't. So like it's 10 o'clock in the morning. Usually I'm with you guys at 9 in the morning. So I'll get used to that. And then just when I get used to it, we'll change it back to 9. So I'm glad to be here with y'all. We've got a couple things today that we're going to be doing. Of course, we have our general session right now. We do have our book study group tonight. We've got 2 weeks left of Atomic Habits with James Clear. So that's exciting, right? We're coming into the home stretch with that. We did have a couple suggestions on what book we're going to read next. And I think if it pleases the group, it might be Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. Might be. We'll see. The jury's still out on that one. I will have you all know that we've completed the entire cycle of e-commerce work groups. So last week was our final e-commerce work group, at least for this time. Emma and Neil, and of course, prior to Emma and Neil, Stuart served with that, and Evelyn served and volunteered. There's an entire archive that's over a year's worth of content. I'll tell you what, for anyone who's a member here, and certainly everyone who's here with me live right now, if you're seeing this on YouTube, you can go to jlsuccessmastermind.com, grab yourself a trial membership. But there is an archive of content, not just with e-commerce, but with life and business tools. And even I'm thinking of Stuart right now with adventures and mindset, right? Tales from the Trail, which even gets into like some survivalist stuff and how we can use, physical survival type, things on the trail as a metaphor for, business and life. But there's so much content in there. My goodness, if you had to go and like buy all this stuff as like courses, 20 grand, easy. I mean, I've spent 300 grand on my own education after leaving government schools. And I've made a bit more than that. So it was a good investment, but wow, bargain, baby, almost free. What's the cost? Almost free. So anyway, glad you guys are here. And I will be seeing everyone for the book study group tonight. But I had a thought, believe it or not, while I was in the gym, which is typically how that happens. And the idea that came up for me was recognizing patterns in my own life and my own behavior, right? Because that's how I would recognize them. It's one thing to look at, a pattern of thought. Why do I keep thinking that? Or why, whenever she says that, I assume this, right? So those are good things that they're subjective things, right? That we can look and we could say, well, I tend to react this way. Now we're getting into the psychology of stuff. But I think more relevant or more revealing, we could say, would be recognizing patterns of action, because what's the end product of all my thinking this? Well, my doing this or non-doing this, right? So if I could recognize patterns which serve or do not serve me, which help or hurt me, well, now I think we can do something about it, right? We can then, back up a little bit and say, all right, behind that action or inaction, what caused me, what prompted me to do that? And so I was thinking first about, Janet was on here just before we went live, and she was talking about increasing her visibility for her business, which is another way to say, promote yourself, do marketing, right? Impinge on the public. All right, good. So we'll call that visibility. What patterns of promotion have been employed up to this point? And we could say, well, and she can look for herself, right? Because this is a very objective thing. We could look at statistically, I've promoted this many items this many times or not, right? So that's something we could look at, and we could say, oh, I could see where if I increased visibility via, additional promotion, and I did this on a consistent basis, that my email list would grow, my customer base, my audience would grow. This is just good. Nobody's going to get a brain hernia over this. This is just basic understanding of how stuff works. Those who outflow shall inflow. Keep putting out content, promotion, data, right? Visibility, right? You're going to attract what? Attention. And ultimately, customers, right? That doesn't have to take a long time, by the way, right? If you got something that people want, you hit that right target audience, it comes back. So that's something we can look at and say, well, there was perhaps a pattern of non-promotion. Okay. And I don't know, I don't look inside, Janet's ledger, but we could look and say, all right, this occurred on a continual basis, or it did not. I see a pattern there. Because as I've often said, habits beat heroics. So it's one thing to stand up and put on your cape and mask and fly off into the sunset and do some heroic thing once. And that can be productive to whatever degree. But habits, right, or the things we do with a pattern, we can systemize. We don't have to think about so much. And those decisions are predetermined. And then we can get into more of an automaticity, a good automaticity, right? So habits can work for or against us. Again, all of this is in line with the book that we're studying right now. So there's that one example of a potential pattern, which may or may not exist up to this point. What's another one that we can look at? This is one that I've gotten familiar with again, because I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of people in the business startup space, okay, e-commerce business startups and things like this. And you guys have heard that saying that how you are in that thing is how you are in everything, or the same person who shows up here is the same person who shows up in every other area of their life, right? So ultimately, there's no compartmentalization of the being, right? The person who's showing up to do this or that task. In fact, I've heard it said that lawyers, right? So let's say you're a lawyer, right? And you spend most of your day in the courtroom, and then you go home and cross-examine your wife or something, right? So there's definitely compartmentalization that's needed, for different roles, for different hats that you wear in different areas of life. But it's the same being, it's the same person who's showing up in all those things. And so because of my opportunity to meet with and counsel a lot of new entrepreneurs, I get to see who they were before they showed up. In other words, their patterns of behavior or reaction to stimuli, right? I get to see how that shows up in this environment, and I can offer suggestions or observations. Hey, did you notice that you did this? Here's an example. Somebody gets started in a business, right? And they're learning these methods, and they get frustrated. They may have all the great data. Here's the instruction. Here's help, coaching, whatever they need. And yet the pattern is one of learning new stuff equals frustration again and again and again. And so the fruit of that frustration is, we could say, less diligent work. Diligence comes from the Latin root word diligere, which means to take delight in. Well, that doesn't sound very delightful. I'm frustrated. So if that's the person who keeps showing up and therefore begrudgingly does this or that task, whether we're talking about the job that they wanted out of, or the business that they just started, or the now I'm going to go get physically fit, I'm going to show up in the gym, they get to be frustrated and they get to begrudgingly force themselves to get whatever crappy result they're going to get. If we just look, this is the first step to solving any problem, is confront the problem, right? So if we just look at, what is it that, what actions are causing this so-called frustration? And I'm not invalidating that a person may very, very real be frustrated. Okay. But if we can just look at what actions, is it the act of just learning a new thing? Is it perhaps the comparing your insides to other people's outsides, because they've been on the path for 5 years and they've already made millions and you're just showing up, and therefore, oh, I'm so inadequate, or I haven't achieved yet, or all right. So is that, again, it's a little bit of, self, introspection going on here. Okay. But is there something that you're doing, back to the idea of getting objective with it? Is there something that you do repeatedly, like a pattern, that then triggers that frustration? Motion and emotion, they're almost the same word. Okay. So, and I've heard, and I know many of you have experimented with this, where you've taken the time to just do something joyful, open, get some space, walk down the street, raise your hands in the air and smile, and get in present time and listen to the birds, and man, you're back, and now you can go and do your subjective work much more readily and without frustration and whatever the emotions are of that, because you did the motions. In fact, you could all experiment with this right now. Lindsay, you don't have to do this right now in this moment. Okay. I know whenever I tell Lindsay, do 10 jumping jacks, she immediately does. You don't have to do this right now, but you could, if you wanted, stand up, raise your hands in the air, and take a pencil across your teeth, right? And with like that pencil across teeth with your hands up in the air. And supposedly that posture, right, of that big smile with the hands in the air would wipe out any, or diminish any feelings of, sadness, sorrow, things like that. Like you cannot maintain to that same degree. You can't maintain being depressed or miserable or whatever when you're smiling and your hands are in the air. So I don't know if that's something you need to do every 15 minutes or whatever. Probably not. It would probably wear out. But if you were, if you were just looking for something you could do as an experiment, that's something you can do. So here's a solution that's coming up for me. We got clouds in Arizona today. Call the press, everybody. I don't know if you can see the room's getting darker behind me. We have a cloud that just passed under the sun. That's like a big deal, especially in autumn. We might not see a cloud for like 4 months. But here's something you could do is whenever we notice that we are experiencing something of a lower nature in terms of our emotional state, I'm less than enthusiastic, or I'm frustrated, or whatever the labels are. What action specifically are we doing or anticipating that we have to do? In other words, what motion or potential motion is with a pattern causing my emotion about it? Why is it that when and I can tell you for myself, this happens still to this day, right? When I go to write an email, okay, and I've written many emails, and a lot of them have fallen on deaf ears. I'll tell you what, I poured my heart out. This email is the best. My goodness, everyone's going to, click and reply and buy the stuff and subscribe to the webinar. Nothing, right? So I can recognize that has happened, right? I've also seen where, I'm running out the door. Oh shit, I got to put an email out right now. I write some piece of crap. I send it. Everybody clicks on it. It's like, man, bam, 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 bam. It's like, this was garbage. Says me, right? So if I'm anticipating, like, all right, what's the pattern, John? John's going to produce great content. All right. So what just happened, right? Now I'm anticipating, all right, is it going to be, the crap that I thought was good that the marketplace didn't respond to? You know what? Here's the thing. If there was any pattern that I could find as a pleasing one, if there was something I could say deliberately, John, here's the pattern you want to have. Here it is. Here's the ideal scene for me. Do what you like with this. Okay. The ideal scene is that I just give myself a command and I freaking follow it. And I don't have any emotion about it. I'm not talking about being a Vulcan or anything, although I guess, I don't know if that's a possibility, but okay, do the thing. You see, when I had to run out the door and I didn't have time to belabor, and pick every word perfectly and, or maybe run it through Hemingway app. Anybody here use Hemingway app? Great copywriting tool. It's hemingwayapp.com. And you just take your copy, whatever you wrote, you shove it in there, and it analyzes it and tells you what, which words you might want to change to make it more readable. You definitely don't want anything above a 7th grade reading level, right? 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, that's really good copy, right? Small words, Hemingway app, copywriters use it. And, break that sentence into 2. That sentence is a bit highbrow, right? It just dumbs it down for you, right? And, but anyway, I didn't do any of that, right? I didn't have time to think about it. I just did it. And I was on to the next thing without any judgment or anticipation about, I hope I'm doing it right or what happens. If I just do that, just reach. Never mind what they think. Never mind the statistics and what they may or may not be, right? Then we can get a whole lot more done. That's a pattern right there that if you've identified in yourself things where you have, because now I've bludgeoned you a bit, let me go ahead and give you a Band-Aid, okay? Yes, there are patterns in your life where you just show up and you get it done. No frustration about it. It might even be, physically laborious and whatever. I'm thinking of, llamas, right? So here's Stuart's with us, right? And so that's physically, managing, and I don't know all the technology behind it, but working with the animals, and there's patterns for that, which serve us, right? It serves the llamas, it serves the llama master, and they get to be corralled and they get to eat and whatever needs to happen with llamas. I'm completely ignorant, okay? But there are things that are, I would dare say, almost automaticities, that if we do this and such each day, it bears fruit, right? And that's good. And there's not a whole lot of thinking about it. Or, I hope this works, or I'm frustrated, right? So you can all see patterns like that in our lives. So I guess the idea then here is, can we create some transference between patterns that work in this area of life and things that we have found frustrated or lacking ideal patterns of behavior in this area of life? For me, I can tell you one right now. It's physical exercise. Done it for decades, whatever. I don't have to think about it. Okay. Now I can also get mentally lazy with that and hit plateaus. Okay. But I'm not looking to get into a bodybuilding competition or anything. But maintaining fitness and whatever, that's a workable pattern. And while physically frustrating, certainly the muscle, can't push anymore, it fails. And that's how you get big and strong, right? You frustrate the muscle. But mentally, meditation. Just still as throughout my day, some of my still moments in terms of mental activity is in the gym. It's, I would say, right up there with sitting there and, burning incense and listening to a tambora or something. I mean, it's right there. So, okay. So that's a workable pattern. I would think that, and I don't know the guy personally, but there was this guy, Wolfgang Mozart, and he had like music that would just come out of him like perfect. Okay. I don't know what he was doing before he was, Mozart, but probably something in the musical space, right? If you're into like the whole, considering, how long the time has gone on, and, here's this guy showing up as Mozart and bam, 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 bam. Okay. So that worked. What didn't work in his life? He was a drunkard, right? He was all stressed out. I don't know if anybody saw the movie Amadeus. I think that's historically somewhat accurate, right? I mean, the guy died young, and, like his body was spent and thrown into the pile of, peasants, right? No grave, no nothing. Wow. Okay. So back to the original idea. The way I show up in this area of my life, same person showing up in this area. Yes, but okay, how can we recognize where we have perhaps diminished ourselves because of patterns that we haven't set up, or just patterns that just because this is the way it didn't work out last time, well, that's not going to work out this time. And so now I'm frustrated, and now I've got to strive or continually question myself, right? If we can just look, this is who I really am. The person who shows up in this area of my life, and I've got these patterns, and it's very fruitful, and I feel good about it. Can that person now show up deliberately and create some new patterns over here in this area of life, business, finances, relationships, whatever? Okay. For me, the strong suit would be, fitness. and I would say to an extent, business. Okay. Although I can also compare myself and compare my insides to other people's outsides, which is real dangerous, and say, well, these people are billionaires. I'm not, I'm a beginner. I suck. Right. Okay. So we got to just decide who we are. And consistently, if we do that consistently, we can develop patterns. But I think we can find instruction from ourselves in other areas of life where we rock, and we know we rock. Right. So if I look at that and I say, oh, that's the guy who should show up here. Wow. I think that's very instructive. What do you guys think? Can you do that? Can you look? Can Janet, can Allie, right? Can Ingrid look and say, you know what? I'm friggin' awesome in this area. That's the person who's going to show up in this area now without thinking about it so much, and just go be that person in this other area of life and create these patterns, right? Before you can talk yourself out of it, before you can get frustrated about it, it's already done. What do you guys think about this? I'd love to hear your thoughts. This all came to me while bench pressing today. Any thoughts on this? Any thoughts? Come on out. Ingrid. Hi, Ingrid. I can't hear Ingrid. Uh-oh. Oh, here she comes.
Am I there now?
Yeah, here you are.
Okay. I'm going to speak to my son about this because he's got some pretty big confidence issues right now in school. And the kid that's showing up for school is not the kid that he is in other fields of his life. So that's great. I'm going to exactly use that concept. You know, bring the movie guy to science class. And
Yeah.
see if that helps him, because right now we're, oh my, yeah.
Okay.
Because the science is just like, he's just self-flagellating, you know?
Okay. So
sadly, because really into science, but he's secure and it's get a concept as fast as somebody else. Because you know how school you have to, well, if you don't know, because Trinity doesn't have to suffer through it, but in our system, you don't wait till everyone gets a concept. You're learning on, say, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and so you need to be moved along. Do you know what I mean?
mm-hmm.
So he's, yeah, that's great. I'm going to point out to him that he can bring the movie Lucas along to school and see if that helps him out in his brain. Thanks for that.
Thank you, Ingrid. So look, Ingrid just gave us an example where not only can we work this for ourselves, but who's dependent on us and is the beneficiary of our best thinking. That's why I waited till I was 40 to have a kid. I wanted to like learn stuff about life before I subjected them to, you know, what I think. You're awesome, Ingrid. Thank you for being who you are. Great picture, by the way. Everybody see Ingrid's new picture? Look at that. There she is with the violin. Beautiful. All right.
Thanks.
All right. Any other thoughts on this? Please feel free. Any other thoughts? Stuart?
I'm thinking. Patterns.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it harkens a lot to Atomic Habits and what we're reading. And if I remember correctly, James Clear talks about how our brains are designed not only to look for things that, conserve cognitive function, right? But part of that, I think, is that our brains look for patterns. And, you know, how you can read that kind of like some text where the vowels are missing, you know what I'm saying? Things like little mental puzzles like that. I think we're just hardwired to solve problems like that. Even to the point when there's data missing in the picture, visually or otherwise, and we sort of automatically want to fill in the gaps, even if that data may not be accurate or not. But we like to identify patterns, and I think it goes back to our paleo ancestors about making making our lives easier and survival and things like that. You know, you're talking about when you get into patterns, it can be patterns of action or inaction, right? And I think that that's important, not only to identify the ways in which we perform well and do the right thing and do the thing, but what's the friction, to use James Clear's terminology, or maybe what's the resistance, to use Dorothea Brand's terminology, right? What's the thing that's preventing us or discouraging us from doing the thing? And I think that when you're talking about having an opportunity like that, right? I mean, I just think it when you're if you're introspective, you kind of mentioned that, right? It gives us an opportunity to look within ourselves, right? And sometimes that's hard, but this concept of, well, what is it about this activity or this behavior that, is making it that I don't want to do that, right? And in the book, right, he's talking about, all the little tricks that we can do to make things obvious, easy, satisfying, all that kind of stuff. But I think just from basic understanding of how my own self works is, and you were mentioning like, yeah, smile, stand up, put your arms out, right? And maybe, there's something to the concept of changing our associations with certain behaviors, right? So, that's a pattern too, is, if you begrudgingly, like you were saying, you do something with kind of a crappy attitude, or to the point where you just don't do it at all, because you don't like it or whatever it is. But if you can sort of add, it's almost like a habit stacking, like he talks about in the book, right? To the point where if you can associate something satisfying or positive with that, then maybe it changes your thoughts about that behavior to the point where then you can enjoy it. Whether it's, if you're not a fan of working out or whatever it is, maybe you listen to music or an ebook or something like that kind of changes the association with the behavior. You mentioned smiling, and it's interesting because there's a whole yoga, like face yoga, right? And like when you smile, it activates all kinds of meridians and gets all the neurons firing. And like when you smile versus a frown, it actually changes your brain chemistry and changes your attitude about things. And so I really appreciate, you kind of bringing that into the picture. You talked about automaticity, which I think the first couple of times I read it, I couldn't even say it because it's like a new word. But I like the concept of automaticity. And for me, and you mentioned the llamas and all that. I mean, you get to a point with whatever it is that you're doing. Hopefully, if you do it long enough, it becomes second nature. It becomes a part of your identity, right? It becomes a part of who you are. For me, working with the animals, it was really only a part as a tour operator, right? That's really only a small part of what I do. But for me, the bigger challenge is getting up either, before the sun comes up or whatever that is, and having to do a whole list of things in the morning without even really thinking about it. And for me, I get in this mindset of programming myself even before I go to bed. I don't know if you do that, John, or, if other people, I mentioned that I used to work as a chef at one of the resort hotels at the ski valley here, 5 a.m. getting up kind of thing. Like, at that point for me, like, I don't want to have to think about what I need to do when I show up at work. So I visualize all that stuff as I'm going to bed, so that when I wake up and I'm half asleep or whatever, I just do those things automatically. When I'm running tours, the whole first part of my day is prepping food and getting all the gear together and all that kind of stuff. And it's dark and it's cold. And again, I don't even want to think about that stuff. So I think for me, that's where a lot of that automaticity comes in. And if you can create those behavior patterns and again, associate it with something that's fun and positive, then, you're enjoying yourself. There's a whole thing, and I'm sure you've seen this, there's a lot of studies about posture and self-esteem, right? And so when you were talking about like, having the arms open stance versus the slumpy, slouchy, looking down, no eye contact, whatever, right? These things actually do scientifically affect our level of optimism, our attitude, our self-esteem, and things like that. So I thought that was pretty cool. And also problem solving, for whatever reason, those things are all related, right? And so if you're in the right headspace, you're more apt to, look at things in a certain way. And then you were talking about something about, doing the perfect and done, or, imperfect and done is better than perfect and done. That's, I keep saying that. I love that. That's one of my favorite additions that you brought into my life. And James Clear talks a little bit about this in the all or nothing behavior, right? And I have a tendency to, as a perfectionist, right? I have a tendency to kind of come from this place of, well, if it's not perfect, then it's not worth doing, or I shouldn't do it, or whatever that is. And I don't know what it was that you were talking about, but just this concept of just do the thing, just do the thing, get her done. Thanks, man. You're awesome.
Thank you, brother. You're awesome too. So good to see you. Hello to Leah as well. All right. Let's see. Anybody else today on this identifying patterns topic? Janet, please.
Yeah, John. So, I heard you say that a long time ago, and I hadn't really thought about it, about the way you do anything is the way you do everything. I hadn't really put that together, but when you did bring it up before and continuing, it's like, oh, yeah, okay. Yeah. Yeah, I do this that way, and I do the other thing, and I seem to have the same, get really excited in the beginning, do all this stuff, and then stamina runs out and whatever. So I think conversely, if I can get myself, or I'm working on getting myself doing something, anything, getting something to where I change that pattern, to where I'm not allowing myself to, well, I'm just being more mindful, and I'm not allowing myself just to start something and then not follow through as completely as I can. And so it should work that if I get myself really on track with something, then that should spill over into other things, right? So that I can reverse that. I can add new, better habits. I can start to say, okay, here's where I start to fall off. What do I do to keep myself, we could say pumped, or just in the game, or whatever it is? What do I do for myself that will keep me going with this, keep this thought going on, keep this actions going on, and come out with a different outcome than I have a lot of times in the past. So I think that just focus, you can't focus on everything at once. And though I try. But I just think that, following through. So like I told you that I had made a presentation. I now know, because I've done all of the stats on it, there were 51 people there. 10 maybe that signed up and didn't show up, 5 that showed up and hadn't signed up. And I have, because I have the Zoom account, I'm able to go in and look at reports and see who showed up, when they came, how long they were there, when they left. So I know if I did the lettering thing the last, I don't know, hour and a half, who left before that, who stayed there for that. And I'm doing things that you've taught us, which is, okay, how can I take this one thing and optimize it? How can I turn it into more product, more visibility, more, engagement with people, build that email list? And so that's what I was working on till 3 a.m. So now I am here at 9 a.m. but it was, but it's like, how do I, and I'm also actually working on sleep. You wouldn't have known it last night. But I am saying, okay, let me see my pattern, my habits of what I'm doing that don't serve me well. And how can I modify that in such a way that I really do see the whole thing through? And then I will get in the habit, and I will know more about that other part of the journey that I don't take so much, staying in it, being enthusiastic, doing it as much as I can, really working on the follow through. And I just think that will be a great exercise for me to be able to then, okay, now I've done it. Now I see it. Now I know that part of the journey. I'm stronger there. I think through those things better, and I will be able to come out with better outcomes, and all of that. So it's maybe the opposite thinking, but I'm used to that. So thank you, John. Thank you for all that.
Thank you, Janet. Good stuff. As everyone was speaking here, I was reminded of Wallace Wattles' Science of Getting Rich, where he talks about if every action is an efficient one, you must be a success. But if every action is inefficient, you must be a failure. And he qualified efficient as those actions that are imbued with purpose and faith. Purpose and faith, according to Wattles, are the component parts of an efficient action. Interesting. Any other thoughts on this? Well, I love you guys. I'm going to be back here with you at 9 p.m. Eastern, which is 7 my time, Mountain Standard Time, because we're all on standard time right now, whether we like it or not. In the meantime, you guys have an awesome day. You totally deserve it. Anything I can do for anyone here, please feel free to hit me up. You know how to reach me.